Hi, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I feel like it's appropriate to start off this conversation with a little appreciation for that season finale of Severance season 2. The whole show is just so good, and I'm not trying to, I could probably do a whole series or podcast or YouTube channel like talking about film and art and acting and yes, even, TV series like this. Or you could, I don't know if they're called TV series or if they're just shows, whatever, but Severance on Apple TV, if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. It's so cool. I really appreciated how artistic it was in their approach to like everything that they did. They really you're immersed in that world, and it feels like really raw. The actors are really great at what they do. They're just amazing. I wasn't going to say anything about this show, which I've been watching as it's been premiering each week. And so Friday was just the premiere of the final episode for season 2. Obviously, I don't typically talk about TV here, except for the one other time with House of Dragons. But okay, let me get to the point. So the character Mark, who is played by, who's he played by? Oh, Adam Scott. The season finale, this is totally a spoiler, so sorry, but so Adam Scott plays Mark. In this last episode, he was literally having a conversation. I'm not going to break down the show, but because I've done this before and it turned into like a 30-minute conversation about a show. The point that I want to make is just a synchronicity where he's literally talking to himself. He's having a conversation because there's the Audi and the Innie version of him, Severance. They've severed off parts of their brain and memories. It's really, really super cool show. But I had to point that out because there's always little synchronicities that come up, specifically in TV or film for me, when I happen to see something, when I happen to watch it, like when I decide to watch it, eerily coinciding with something that I needed to draw a line to, or some sort of synchronicity that really speaks to my heart. And I felt like that can't be something that only happens to me. Like I'm sure other people experience that, especially when it comes to really great actors and actresses who immerse in their role and embody these emotions and these characters and these stories in ways where you really connect and relate to it. Acting is such an interesting profession and art. If you've ever experienced that, or if you do experience that, where you go to watch something, maybe it's not just released, or maybe it is in the same timing that it is being released, whatever the case is, it just happens to coincide with something that is speaking to you on like a relational level. I don't know how they do it, because actually this show and so Severance and what is the other one called? Oh, The White Lotus are both premiering right now. And they both are coinciding and hitting themes that are happening like right now in the moment they're released, like collective themes. And it's so interesting. I don't know how they do it. Those creators, those directors, actors, writers, everyone who contributes must be like really tuned in to this collective energy in the world. And you know how I think you do that, which is what we're going to talk about actually right now. And the point of, beyond the shows and that little intro, I think they do that though through tapping into their own frequency. When you're so in your own frequency, that's where you're available to the universal frequency. And so today I really want to talk about the heart center and elaborate on what it means to follow your heart's desire or connect to that heart's desire. I actually did literally 2 other of these conversations, but they felt more like channeled journaling. I said a lot during those talks, but I might share them. But even though I said a lot in there, it just feels like there's something else, like some other angle, some other way to put it. And so that's what the point of this one is going to be about. We're going to hit it from a different angle. So basically, this is inspired by this moment. I was reading the text a book that I've had for like 2 years. I just opened it and started reading from the beginning again because it's like a full text. It's The Heart of Listening by Hugh Milne. He's a craniosacral therapist, so it's very, in his words, like a practical approach to visionary energy healing work. So it's not for everybody, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I like to kind of look at it sometimes just to get different perspectives. And the other day I decided to look at it, opened up to the first chapter. I've read this part that I read a lot of times. I even like noted it and highlighted it and put little like comments by it from previous times when I've read this book. But at this time it hit different. And what I read about was he gives a preface of like human evolution and like the body and how consciousness may have emerged, because craniosacral therapy is the head, is the skull, the bone of the sphenoid. It's not something to generalize. It's a very subtle practice where you tune into the energy wave of the cranium. And I'm not saying I do that, but I'm saying it's interesting to learn from healers for different modalities and stuff. So anyways, to preface his work, he felt to share the evolution of the human body, specifically the bones. And he began talking about female hips because the hips play a big part. Like all the bones are connected. So he outlines this point in history. Basically, we weren't the same species when we were hunter-gatherers. We evolved from there. And one of the biggest differences that I actually don't think is ever talked about when people talk about our history in this way, hunter-gatherers, they didn't learn it in school. Never heard it on podcasts that I've listened to. Of course, this is just my limited perspective, but still, I think it's something to say. A major shift, evolutionary quantum leap, I would say, that happened at that time was women, female bodies, stopped the estrus cycle, which was the annual going in heat, literally dropped it and adapted to the menstrual cycle, which is the monthly period, menstruation, which is synced to the moon. This shifted everything. And it came from the internal awakening of a desire to change their environment, because the estrus cycle pretty much meant that they're locked into this heat. And that meant that their male partners knew exactly when they would be able to conceive. The males would only stick around for the heat season just to ensure that they would get their offspring and then beat out the competition. This left the tribes vulnerable, it left the women vulnerable, and it left the children vulnerable. And so here's what we're going to talk about. The heart's desire is this inner awakening that happens through not an individual, not even a group, but a collective humanness, species wanting to, feeling nature's call to change, to evolve, to iterate and upgrade. That's what happened. Hunter-gatherers 10,000 years ago did not have the means to call in committees or make policies or talk about what needs to change in relationships. Collectively, they must have been so synchronized, first of all, with the rhythm of the moon, the sun, their bodies and nature and each other, to the point where the feminine energy, which comes from both male and females, right? It's not just because the change manifested through the female body. I don't want you to get confused with what I'm saying, thinking that I'm talking about it's women, because it's feminine energy. Must have been awakened in both species, both genders, because otherwise I don't know if the change would have occurred. The male felt the pressure of hunting and gathering. All of the environmental factors of the time culminated to the inner awakening through the feminine energy in both genders to change something within the human biology. And how would that be possible if it were not that we are all connected, or they were all connected? By saying they, it's an extension of us. We come from this lineage. How would they have done that if even their relationships were fragmented? The whole point of the change was because of the disharmony they were experiencing in their environment. specifically the females probably felt like no autonomy, no sense of inner control, because everything about them was a signal for the external environment to react to them in ways that they had no control over. The feminine energy awakens within, meaning within the consciousness of the individual and the collective, to begin this awakening to a new way of being, this evolving, this change. And so how does this relate with the heart's desires? Because I feel like that is what the heart's desires, that's an example of what it might be. There's a change happening within us right now. If we look in history, which I didn't intentionally do, I was drawn to read the book, but this came through after I read it. It makes sense. Let's just talk about the heart for a second. The heart chakra, for example, Anahata, the fact that science tells us that the heart's magnetic field, the electromagnetic field of the heart, is 60 times bigger than that of the mind or any other energy center. What does that mean? Like, just close your eyes, visualize the torus, the shape around your heart, the field of energy, like a grid, almost like the earth, around you. And this magnified field in the heart, because, scriptures say it, the Bible says it, it's all throughout all of the traditions. The divine is in your heart. The heart even has spirals in it, even has like shapes of the DNA are within the heart muscles. And there's just a lot of so much divinity. It's like interwoven into the nature and the fabric of your being, and it connects deeply into that heart space. And so when we think about the field of our heart being in the electromagnetic field being so much greater, a lot of the times we hear it when we speak of the heart's desires, it's about manifesting, which is fine. But I really feel like the difference is that, like those women and men with the awakening of this desire in them to change things, to bring about change in the environment, they had to literally manifest the menstrual cycle, which meant, what did that mean? It meant that they were fertile all the time, receptive all the time. This meant that the men could no longer leave and abandon them or their children or their families or their tribe. It created much stronger cohesion in the tribe. Relationships were an integral part of life. They weren't individualized and siloed and, weird as they are today. They were a part of life and they were balanced. The menstrual cycle gave a lot of autonomy to women. At the same time, it gave more emotional depth to women. Think about it. They really didn't have any idea what to do before, no moral compass. And they probably heavily relied on nature for guidance and for help in managing and navigating all of this, the things that they were experiencing. I mean, childbirth multiple times and then just being left alone without an inner system or process to like shed and renew and understand, because our menstrual cycle is it's like a computer that upgrades every month. It distributes our hormones and balances everything, and it's something to respect and to honor and have reverence for if you do live in a female body. Society and culture in the past, I don't know so much today, but definitely in the past, it was like a message sent all the time to women, to girls, that it's something to hide, something that's painful, something that sucks, something to complain about. No, it's not, actually. And if you cut out processed food, if you treated yourself a little bit better and you really took the time to feel into your cycle, you would understand and appreciate yourself much more, because the menstrual cycle is literally a symbol of our power because we manifested it. It's a symbol of the subtle power of feminine energy because it manifested it without force. It did it through its powerful, subtle, graceful, natural energy. How? Through the heart. Through, what does it mean? I know that when I speak of these things, it sounds like, what do you mean the heart? Like, just drop concepts, drop to everything for a second and think about nature. Think about being present and how simple it is when you are in nature. Observing the wind, you don't really observe the wind, but you're in the wind, you're observing the birds, the sky, the stars, and how simple that is. when I really try to put myself in their shoes 10,000 years ago, how painful it must have been and how confusing and hard and how strong they were. They had no other alternative but to have faith in nature. When I look up at the stars, for example, instantly feel peace. I feel expansive, but I also feel as if they're looking at me, looking at us too. And there's a sense of faith there, and there's a relationship to build there as well. And that's what I mean too with the moon. Say they must have had no other alternative but to trust, because, by the way, the moon cycle and the menstrual cycle are exactly the same amount of time. That's no coincidence. They were in tune with that rhythm, and they trusted the rhythm, the heart, the subtlety of their being and of being in nature, like following the breath. Like I mentioned earlier, craniosacral therapy, you can follow the rhythm of the breath. You can follow the prana. You can follow the heartbeat, which is subtler than the breath. Even subtler than the pulse, the heartbeat, is the cranial wave, which, it's like there's subtler and subtler levels. And when you're in nature and available, you are easily there with that subtlety because you are that subtlety. I think it's really something powerful for us to have conversations about. Not just conversations, okay? Not just about like, here's the thing about the heart's desires. This is coming from me now, just my perspective on it. It feels like if you want to say the new world or the new earth, all these little things that we all think something's going to happen. No, what's going to happen is we have to really drop the self, the ego, limited self, whose desires are endless, ceaseless, temporary, fleeting, and they never are satisfied or satiated. And if we continue to operate through the ego, it's not like you're wrong for manifesting a beautiful life. Hello, like we do that because, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a point in a pivoting and a rotating into a new dimension when you start to appreciate the heart in this way and its connection to nature that is beyond what your mind could ever manifest or dream of, beyond what the ego could ever ask for or try to get or control. The feminine and the masculine energies, taking the example of our history of dropping estrus for the menstrual cycle, there's a collaboration happening beneath the surface with feminine energy and masculine energy, collaborating to awaken consciousness in the heart space, because that magnetic field of the heart, the electromagnetic field of the heart, why do you think it's larger than all the others of our energy centers and of our mind? Because it's meant to be a universal field. It's meant to be something tapped into that we connect with each other through. It's a field of information, and it's very magnetic, not so that you can fulfill your own selfish desires, but so that you can contribute to this universal upgrade. The new world, new earth will not be created on some foundation that, has ever been before. It just won't. And the heart, again, this thing that we're talking about, nobody can claim it. Nobody can say like I discovered. No, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's not about who discovered what. It's not about who says what first or does this first or who has the acclaim. It's so boring and so just not relevant. And that kind of behavior is what is going to keep us held back. That kind of thinking and needing to gratify or satiate, it's like gratifying the ego, because you can't satiate the ego. You can't forever. And it's just so, we have to let go of it. And we have to begin a new way. The new way is an unknown path. No one person will have the answer. We can't let that happen either. We can't like gravitate to polarizing our energies one way or the other, because that's just not going to work. It won't work. It doesn't work that way. it's like, it's something different. I'm not like, there's no words that are coming through because it just feels like there's beyond the words. It's a feeling deeper than an emotion, but a feeling. And hopefully you're feeling it or sensing it or picking up on it in some way. And there's a reverence, a shared, respectful, mutual reverence here for what is being shared. Because it's not about one person, one individual. It's not about me or you. It's not about anything, like let me say that again. It's not about anything that we think it's about. This brings me to the point that the external relationships that our ancestors were faced with that were so painful, probably so difficult to navigate, that they had to turn within. They had to turn to nature. They had to make a change. They had to trust their heart. But as deep as that made them go, it was an external thing that led to that inner awakening. It was the relationships and the disharmony between masculine and feminine energy that manifested this powerful shift in our evolution and awakening in our consciousness. And so to really put that, to sit back with that and to think about that and to feel that and to contemplate that, you can see how important relationships are beyond the surface of what you're getting out of the relationship, but like the true mutual respect in a relationship that is only found through knowing each other, knowing one another. We can't really know each other without the heart being open and perceptive and activated and listening to it, listening to each other through that heart. There's a lot to say about feminine, about masculine energy, and about their roles, and about how they work together and they dance to evolve our species. And it's really important stuff, and it's like deep, but it's also like, I'm no expert in anything. It feels like something channeled, but at the same time, whenever I feel like there's something being channeled, I feel like I'm simply tapping into some conversation that's probably already happened somewhere else in private or in other collectives. I don't know of them, but because it feels like I've never heard something like this before, but I'm not, arrogant enough or naive enough to believe that it's coming through like to me, from me specifically. No, it's not. It's not at all. There's something sacred about this. To build a foundation of openness and a new world that is beneficial for all and peaceful and beautiful and harmonious. It's going to take some really brave souls, really brave people to pave that unknown path brick by brick and stone by stone and breath by breath. And, we need each other, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We need to respect this unfolding just as much as we need to respect ourselves and respect each other. We can't go anywhere without the foundation of first respecting ourselves. And what a great way to learn. Anyways, what a great way to evolve to the point where you're ready to contribute to that kind of environment in the world, or that kind of world period in general, where it's not just some ideology or, euphemism or, vision. It's manifest. I really feel we have the power to do that if we listen to nature, to ourselves. And so that is also why I'll just end here with this, why it's so important to meditate. It's more important than ever to meditate, to really find a meditation practice that works for you, that is rooted in something greater than you. So there are processes that you undergo, of course, and it takes time. Sometimes it doesn't, but I'll just say this. If you've been doing a meditation practice that is mostly centered around your bubble, your reality, and it doesn't really confront your reality in the way that meditation is meant to. I challenge you to go beyond and to explore different practices. Self-study, you can look at the Yoga Sutras. They're so beneficial for meditating, for learning about the mind. Buddha's Eightfold Path or Four Noble Truths, and all the rest. Mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh, makes it very simple. There's lots of places, by the grace of God, give us very practical ways to start going within for real profound shifts to happen in consciousness, not just in identity. Because I think that's where a lot of this stuff kind of stops for most people. They just keep shifting identities. And honestly, even if you think you're doing that, it's half-hearted because all of your stuff is still with you. Sometimes. I'm not going to go there right now, but meditate. Even if that's simply go outside and be in nature without anything else but yourself. And see God in everything. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to leave this here. So if you enjoyed this conversation, and if you enjoy my work and want to support me, all of the links to do that and all the information be in the description below. You can subscribe to my app where I share yoga practices, breathing, meditation, and comment. Actually, commenting here is one of the best ways to support this community. A conversation is the best way to support this community and to help it grow and continue to shine a brighter light on these topics if they interest you. And so I'm going to leave it here, sending you lots of love. Namaste.